Welcome to Portsmouth This Week. We're filming this today on January 18th, 2013. I'm Jeff Richard. I'll be hosting the program today. It should be a very interesting program. We have as our guest today Mr. Ray Berberick, and Ray is the recently elected chair of the Portsmouth Economic Development Committee, otherwise referred to as the PEDC. Part of his duties was to make the annual presentation that the PEDC gives the town council, and that was done this past Monday's town council meeting. Unfortunately, that meeting was such a jammed agenda meeting that by the time Ray got a chance to get up and do his slide presentations, it was very late in the evening, and we lost a considerable number of the folks who were otherwise in the audience that day. So we decided we'd do a program on the subject of economic development. And I think it's very timely because if you're reading the media these days, the state is having to galvanize because our statistics across the board relating to business are not very comforting. So, and everybody recognizes that, and I think all the way up to the governor's office. And they are in fact engaged in a process of review, again, I guess. In fact, the state has hired a company called Fourth Economy to begin a review process and make some recommendations. But having said what the state is doing, I'm going to talk with Ray right now about what our local PEDC is doing. And this is the first page of the document which was created by the PEDC. It is in fact on the entire presentation is on our town website.
Correct. So
talk to me a little bit, Ray, about what is unique about Portsmouth's business climate that is maybe different from the state or other towns that are close by?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts, Jeff. A lot of it has to do with history. Is that a long time ago, the town of Portsmouth was quite agrarian, much more than it is now. And over time, a lot of the farmers learned that you could sell some land and develop residential areas and make some money, which was more lucrative than potatoes and other things. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But there was no long-term coherent strategy. There was no one single source document that gave guidance or a vision to the town. And over the last several years, it's been a piecemeal approach to development. It's a business person wants to come in and the business goes in. And the zoning kind of reacted to that. And for folks in town, you know, you go up and down East and West Main, there's a business, a house, a business, a house. And, you know, to try to do economic development or have a peaceful neighborhood, challenging at best.
Yeah. In our planning, I noticed the planning group in town working on the master plan.
The town comprehensive community plan?
Yes, that's the one. And you made, in your presentation, you made reference to the fact that the PEDC is working with a component of that.
Correct.
That plan. It seemed to me recall that from a prior program that this plan is quite dated at this point. So what you're doing is actually new thought and what it ought to be as opposed to what it used to be?
Correct. There's in essence a chain of command here. Of course, John Klimm is the town administrator, right. Is overall watching everything that we're doing. Next, arguably, is Gary Crosby, the town planner, who has principal responsibility for updating the town comprehensive community plan. Now that's easier said than done because there's 14 elements and even by title, some of the elements are at cross purposes like economic development and open space. So these goals and objectives, policies and implementation items that we put in each of the elements have to be synchronized. We just can't send up 14 different opinions, each element not working together because then it defeats the purpose. So what John Klimm, Gary Crosby, Bill Clark, and myself have met, and we'll have a couple of meetings going forward to synchronize all of the elements of the update of the entire town comprehensive community plan. It's going to be open, transparent. We ask town residents to come forward to help, so we build consensus. So when we have a final product that we present to the town council, it's a great quality, it's got consensus already, and then when we deliver it to the state, there should be little or no problem therein.
Good. In your presentation to the town council, you highlighted an interesting way to do business. You called your effort the 7 imperatives. Could you just briefly go through how you got to define your activity in that way?
Well, the 7 imperatives are actually a collection of ideas from being on the PDC the last 4 years and just taking a lot of notes and listening to other people, going to town council meetings, going to zoning board meetings. The 2 PEDC workshops that we had in 2009 produced an incredible amount of useful information on what the town should do economically going forward. And you just try to synthesize down the main points, but as part of a little sales aspect, if you can get it into as few amount of words as possible, it becomes memorable. So we ended up with the 7 imperatives. And so if someone were to ask a town council member now, what are you doing economically in Portsmouth? They go, we have the 7 imperatives. Okay, and then you can tap dance.
I know they were probably so tired Monday night that, of course, they did the read-ahead, I'm sure, each of them.
And when they had a read-ahead on the read-ahead, too. So.
Yeah, okay, good. The in terms of the gap that you discussed with them, how did we get to that gap, and what do we need to do about it?
Well, the gap, there's a chart in the slides, but that's the work that the PDC has done over the several years prior. Bob Andrews and John Palmieri and Doug Smith, Gary Gump, Bob Hamilton, Rich Zalipsky, and those folks who've done incredible work with the PDC to give us the background, the knowledge, and the credibility to use as a springboard for us now going forward. They've done the homework, the research, the vetting, the consensus building of the SWOT analysis and others. And then out of those 2009 workshops, there were some obvious things that needed to be done. We needed to update the plan. We had to do potentially some streamlining process for new businesses to get started. In PDC meetings in the last couple of years, we said, we need to promote new businesses. And so that's where the imperatives came from, and closing the gap is part of that. The gap we can define numerically. Now we can go back in time and actually get real numbers on what the gap is. And then going forward, they're projected. They're not exact, but nonetheless, the gap is defined as the difference between increasing costs and flat or declining revenues. So even if we had no changes in the number of homes and businesses and kept the tax rate flat, inflation is going to increase cost. So if your tax revenue and everything else stays the same, just general inflation is going to increase the cost. So arguably there's always going to be that gap going forward, which puts a premium, if you will, on raising revenue. Now there's a couple of ways to deal with the gap. You can cut spending. And we all know well in this town that it's an annual dogfight to cut spending.
So the budgetary process, which we are now beginning for the next fiscal year, has got to pay attention to that very gap.
Right. You either raise taxes, cut spending, or generate revenue. All activities simply boil down to one of those 3 categories.
Raising taxes is not a very popular event.
No, nobody
in the
wants
state,
taxes
in
to
this
go
state
up.
right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if over time you've been looking at businesses that to attract, and businesses that are here, you want to keep them here and make them as happy as they can possibly be. At the same time, we're trying to fund public services, the schools, the fire department, the police department, etc., and not raise taxes. It would seem like an almost insurmountable task. So the vision to carry that out, part of that's coming out of the PEDC and must migrate through the town administrator and into the heads of the town council, who will then have to vote on a way forward. Meanwhile, the community plan is got to be progressing through these very minds. A very large task we are going about. If you go back in time, which businesses have most recently been attracted to Portsmouth, and how have they done?
First one that comes to mind, I mean, how recent? Last couple of years, several years?
How about a decade?
Okay, I would say at least the one that comes to mind is All Island Landscaping.
Yes,
I mean,
Byron
that's
Reimer,
a tremendous success story, and I know them on several levels.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's the stores over Lulu's and Stalee's and Custom Coffee House, George Dumani Custom. I don't know if you've been in there, but
I was in there yesterday, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
He's got a nice stream of folks going in and out of there. The little office park at Kings Grant has had regular clients over there for a long period of time. Trying to visualize the brick and mortar places. DeCastro's farm, but I think they've been there for a while down there in the corner of Subto and East Main.
Hodges Badge has been here for
a while. Unfortunately, and I probably we're struggling to find an answer for that. Portsmouth is uniquely challenged. There's a couple of businesses up in the mall right down the street at 3001 East Main. Some empty stores there. And they moved their businesses down to Middletown. And I know the guys, and I went down and asked them, I said, why'd you leave? And they said, volume. In one simple word, volume of people coming in the front door.
Sure.
And it's tough up at this corner of the island.
So attracting a business up here is gutter, the curb appeal is an issue. But if you have a business that does not require curb appeal, you're creating something that you're going to sell elsewhere.
That's right, and that's the challenge they're in. I mean, this is a process. This is the beginning. This is opening the door to a room of a lot of challenges, but nonetheless, we need to do it. We don't have a choice, and we promote current businesses because a lot of the businesses in town are service oriented. There's some product services like the Portsmouth shop and the shops over Kings Grant, Clock Tower Square. The Almy Village, there's some product but service related things there as well. So we need to promote the current businesses in town, and there's a chart in here that talks to that the commercial, the percentage of taxes that are related to the commercial keep the pressure off the amount of taxes that the residents pay. So it behooves any town to do an intelligent approach to attracting new businesses in order to keep the pressure off the residential taxes.
The last couple of years of charts that I have been familiar with, it shows that we're getting about 10% of our revenue from business taxes as opposed to and that has stayed virtually flat for the last few years, has it not?
Yes, it has.
Okay. So the challenge which the economic development mindset has not been able to move that statistic. What makes us think that we can succeed in moving it
well,
now?
There's some potential down the road going forward. That there's two big buildings on Raytheon that they have up for sale. So there's some potential to
behind the gates.
Correct. And certainly some gates might have to be moved, security, other things, and don't want to even begin to guess what Raytheon's going to try to do. But Bill Clark, our business director, Director of Business Development, is aware that Raytheon is looking to do something with those buildings. So we have to be proactive and get out ahead and have a plan in place, or at least guidance in place, so something desirable comes in there.
Sure. Yep.
And then there's the Tank Farms 1 and 2, that process actually is moving along. The name of the committee that is now, it's not the planning authority, it's the implementation authority now.
But that planning went island-wide. Tina Dolan and company.
Right, but there's also subordinate organizations, one for each town. So there's a long shot, but still an outside chance that Tank Farms 1 and 2 could show up a little bit earlier than expected.
Yeah, that process has been going on for years.
Right.
Well, that would be interesting. But the plan that was in place, the West Side Development Plan,
the West Side Master Plan,
is still on the shelf, as far as I know, and nobody has taken it down.
In fact, I've had discussions with Tina Dolan, and we, in our committee meeting a couple of nights ago, have designated a specific liaison between our committee and her committee to make sure we're up to date and have all of the breaking news with respect to any kind of elements that are going on within Aquidneck Island, and that's what we need to do, things like that.
Absolutely. I was in Melville Park the other day, and I'm looking across the fence at the tanks are still in the ground, and all the piping and all the contaminated soil. I mean, it's all still there, untouched. The Navy has done no remediation on that ground. So wherever it goes, whoever ends up in the development mode is going to take a long time.
Well, that is a sensitive subject, but just to have a common understanding that the town of Portsmouth is not going to take ownership of the land. Otherwise, they'd have to be responsible for cleanup.
Absolutely
so the
right.
land will go straight from the Navy to a developer, and it's the discussions between them as to what level the Navy cleans it and the costs and then the follow-on. So those tricky points will be left up to the experts there, but certainly enough folks have advised past and present town councils on what they should and should not do with respect to those. But really, it's up to us, the PEDC and folks who joined the PEDC, to build a vision of what should go there.
Over and above what what the previous plan did, I think, have a vision to the extent that it had housing, even lower income housing, and as well as businesses as they came up the hill. So, but like any plan, it depends on the developer. If it goes straight to development, and the developer could say, "Hey, listen, I'm only going to make money if this is the way we go about business." But you have a chart in your presentation about what the value is in terms of revenue stream and cost streams for open space, business land, and homes. And can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a bunch of homework and research that the PEDC has done over the last several years. And in essence, it's to underscore a point that you don't necessarily want to go too far down the road with residential development. The graph points out that if you have a business and the business pays $1 in taxes, but it only costs the town 73 cents to deal with that business. So there's a profit off of that $1 in taxes that come from a business. Open space, because there's low maintenance and no kids that go to the school and some other factors. The open space people, even though the land is undeveloped, someone owns it and is paying taxes on it. So there is a return on investment there as well. But when you get to residential, it's on the other side of the coin. For every dollar that the town takes in, it costs the town $1.17 to take care of that residence. And that's because of schools largely, and fire, police, those kinds of things, water. So we're not saying that we should not build any more houses in town. There is a good balance. There's always a consensus of open space, residential, and business. The mix, the answer is in the middle. But if you go too far in any one direction, you don't, to argue in the dialectic, you don't want to have all of Portsmouth all open space or all business or all residential. There's a mix.
Yeah, I was certainly attracted here because of the quasi-farming lifestyle that we have. There's still tractors on the East and West Main Road going between farm plots, because the existing farm plots for existing farming businesses are scattered all over the place. So they're moving equipment all the time. But the notion that development will occur and houses will be built because people have a right to send their property to whatever use they would like to, and the developers, who are, after all, employing people, are a source of work. They need places to build things on. But what is the connection between the PEDC, the planning committee, all volunteers, and the zoning committee, all volunteers? Example, the Seafair development. What had the PEDC done several years ago that suggested that the Seafair Inn would come down and in its place would be single homes? And how did that work through planning, the community plan, and the zoning board?
No, well, that, to the best of my knowledge, that did not come through the PEDC formally, and not that it should. We would have liked to have known ahead of time, so we could have at least done some homework and then maybe had submitted an opinion to the planning board, but I don't think we had the opportunity to do that. And that's one of the imperatives that I'm addressing in here or that's related to why I want to do this, is that again, I'm not saying that the projects that I know about are wrong or should not be done. The 130 some odd houses that are potentially going in up by Weyerhaeuser, another 25 house development down in Albin, the Portsmouth Abbey just brought the Briggs property, and we're not sure what they have in mind for it, if they're going to resell it, develop it, or keep it as open space. Don't know yet. There's a new petition for some houses to go in up on Schoolhouse Lane. I mean, all of those developers absolutely have the right. They go to the building inspector, then they go through the process of the planning and zoning board, but we don't have a document that can say, whoa, wait a minute, let's have a nice discussion about this to see if it makes economic sense to do this.
It seems to me that the gap issue is a very serious one every time we convert otherwise open space. Does the Open Space Committee, there's another group of Portsmouth active volunteer groups, does the Open Space Committee, how does that play into this? They would say, no, we don't want that development.
As terms of a specific development, that's a little harder to say. I mean, they certainly can resist if they want. However, what I hope to do to support Gary, who has ownership for the whole comp plan, but our economic development section is going to be the guide for economic development. But before we go final on the plan, open space is one of the elements. And then my intent is to meet with the open space folks and the housing folks and the water folks and all of the other elements within the plan, hammer out all these issues now. So then we give a final draft to Gary and goes, okay, it's already been deconflicted. We tighten it up, give it to the town council, they bless it, goes to the state. Now we issue that to the planning board saying, follow these guidelines.
I remember, perhaps it was Gary on this program, it had talked about the fact that we well know exactly what land is currently development ready, as it were. I mean, that is not already something on it. We also know that the things that are on land right now don't always have to stay there. They can come down and be replaced by something else, because we have an awful lot of little summer structures all over the place here that somebody could buy the entire complex and it comes down. But in that, the comprehensive community plan has got to be envisioning some of this. What are we going to look like 20 years from now?
Exactly.
And so your committee is part of that discussion, and I think in a very important one. But your particular interest is in the business side of it.
Yes.
I assume.
Yes.
So that means that you worry about farms going away, and you worry about businesses going away or businesses coming in, that relationship. But open space is not your worry.
Not my principal worry, but again, I believe there's balance. I cannot ignore it. I have to take it into consideration, but the PEDC is not out for a land grab. I mean, I'm not advocating any kind of superior industrial park that's going to overwhelm Portsmouth. No, that's not the intent.
It's kind of hard to do without a sewer system.
No, again, the answer is in the middle, and that's why thank you for hosting the show. And the sales pitch is to get folks that in town that have good ideas and strong opinions, come and join my committee, join the Open Space Committee, talk to Gary Crosby, volunteer, get involved, because when we write this comp plan over the next 6 to 12 months, that is going to be our blueprint and our marching orders for the town going forward in a number of areas. It's not just another piece of paper. We've got to make it real. One thing, if I may, for those folks that are so inclined, the town of Hull, Mass. has a very good economic development section and their town website. The town of Barnstable, Mass. John Klimm, thank you. But also the town of Westerly has some really good stuff. Now, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Our committee we've designated and made certain tasks to certain folks to go out and benchmark and find the good ideas that are already out there. And literally, it'd be easy for us just to grab something from another town, change the name, and boom, we're 90% done in our work there. We don't have to start from scratch. But there's a lot of good ideas out there that we can just tweak a little bit, adjust it to Portsmouth, put it in place, have one plan that all of the town residents, even with some resistance, have a blueprint and a roadmap.
But it's going to have to be a dynamic plan. However.
Oh, yes.
You're going to review it with consistency and make adjustments as it
And I know Gary Crosby was in here earlier, but and it would probably be wise to have him in here again. But having a chance to work with him and talk with him going forward, I would suggest that this document, the comp plan, is so important to the town it needs almost to be treated like the charter and have regular reviews. And that's as far as I'll go.
I think
the
I would
details
agree
can
with
be
you
worked
because
out with John and Gary and others.
It's so easy when we have so few actual employees in our town who we depend so much on all of us who are volunteering our time to do these things. And with life going on as it is, the community plans, I think, tend to sit on the shelf and get real dusty everywhere.
And that was interesting, again, for those of us on the committees over the last several years, going to the town council meetings and the zoning meetings and the planning meetings, and people would invoke the comp plan as their rationale for their position, and I have read the comp plan and I'm going like, you know?
Well, I was encouraged when the state decided to hire the fourth economy to come in and I guess they're looking to analyze the state's investment, talent, sustainability, place, and diversity. And their index, which I would highly recommend, if you Google fourth economy and take a look at their index to see who they have rated as a great place to do business, county-wise. They use counties. But I highly recommend you do that. We've just got a couple of minutes left here, so I'm going to spend just a second talking about the 375th events.
Good stuff.
We are looking at the February schedule for 375th, and there's one event that is particularly near and dear to me, and that's a trek through Melville Park. We've outlined a 3.75 click walkway from start to finish. We've got 100 ribbons, medals to award to the first 100 people who
by the
make
tank
that
farm.
walk. So we encourage everybody to come out and do that. And I want to thank, as we close here, thank Ray Berberick from the PEDC here in Portsmouth for spending some time with us.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
and hope you enjoyed this program.
(2013) is the 375th anniversary of the founding of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Portsmouth was settled in 1638 by a group of religious dissenters from the Boston colony, including Dr. John Clark, William Coddington, and Anne Hutchinson. It is named after Portsmouth, Hampshire, England. Roger Williams convinced the settlers that they should go to Rhode Island instead of settling in New Jersey. Portsmouth was founded by the signers of the Portsmouth Compact. Its original Indian name was Pocasset. To honor the founding of our town and its subsequent history, the community of Portsmouth plans a series of public events and observances over the course of the year. Planning for these events has begun, and volunteers are needed to participate in developing and conducting these civic events. Join your friends and neighbors and help us all celebrate Portsmouth's 375th year.